That has angered a handful of House Republicans from high-tax states, but there probably aren't enough of them to prevent passage of the House bill on Thursday. In the Senate, it's a different story. They can only afford to lose 2 Senate Republicans, and already, Roxana, one of them, Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, has a new statement out saying that he cannot support the Senate plan in its current form because the benefits are too heavily weighted towards large corporations rather than small businesses.
Nancy, Republicans called their health care plan a must-pass bill, and they've said the same thing about tax reform. With the latest changes, how confident are lawmakers that they can get this passed by the end of the year?
Well, we're seeing a very similar situation, Roxana, to what we saw with health care, which is that the House managed to pass its health care bill with relative ease, and they are certainly poised to do the same with tax reform on Thursday. But the Senate looks like it could have a bit more trouble. Beyond Ron Johnson, you have Senator Susan Collins of Maine, who is no big fan of the individual mandate from Obamacare, saying that she still doesn't know if it's appropriate to include a repeal of the individual mandate in what is otherwise a tax reform bill. Yes, Republicans would accrue some savings from eliminating the individual mandate, but she and possibly others will argue that it is not responsible to basically kick out one of the legs of this Obamacare stool without putting something in place to replace it.
And the new Senate proposal will also make individual tax cuts temporary, but business cuts permanent. How are Republicans defending themselves from accusations they're giving preferential treatment to businesses over the middle class?
What they're arguing is that this is something that happens all the time. There are tax cuts and tax packages that sunset, and then they get renewed by Congress year after year after year, and they argue that this will be no different. Beyond that, Roxana, they're saying that if this is something that really troubles Democrats, the fact that the corporate tax cuts would be permanent and the individual tax cuts would expire, well, Democrats can just go ahead and agree to forego this budget rule that requires Republicans to do this in order to make sure that their plan hits the limits for a cost of a tax plan that has been set out by the budget process. Democrats are obviously not going to help Republicans with that. They say that if Republicans would simply be a little less generous with big corporations, maybe not slash the corporate tax rate permanently from 35% down to 20%, perhaps they'd be able to afford to make some of these tax cuts for the middle class permanent. You basically got an argument going on here where Democrats are saying that a lot of this bill, which Republicans say is aimed at the middle class, really is trickle-down economics, where they're giving big breaks to corporations and to the wealthy with the assumption that that will end up, lifting all boats and everyone will be better off. Republicans say that the latest version of their plan has more cuts targeted directly for the middle class than earlier versions of the bill, and they insist that now virtually all middle-class families would see at least a slight tax cut as a result of this bill.
Nancy Cordes on Capitol Hill, thank you.
You're welcome.